Welcome everyone. Here we are at the exhibition hall of the Japanese Friendship Garden, welcoming you to watch a special videotape demonstration from Debbie Warriner, who is ranked Master of the Ichiyo School. JFG has graciously partnered with II to allow us to use their exhibition hall today for Debbie's demonstration, and we thank them for their use of their facilities. Very special thanks goes to Emiko Scudders at JFG for contributing to this effort. She's the event coordinator here. Many of you saw Debbie's recent demonstration at JFG's online Master Series program, so you may be familiar with her work. Ordinarily, I would introduce Emiko here, but she's stepped away, so if we have time at the end, I'll bring her in and you can meet her. Debbie will be making 4 arrangements with the theme of visible support, which she will describe during the demonstration. I want to read her resume and some background history of the school. Deborah has been studying, teaching, demonstrating, and exhibiting Ikebana for over 30 years and holds the rank of Master of Ichiyo School at Ikebana, excuse me. She began her studies in 1988 while living in Tokyo, Japan, and continued when her family relocated to London, England in 1990, and ultimately returned to San Diego in 2003. She has 10 gold medals for Ikebana arrangements from the Royal Horticultural Society's Chelsea's Flower Show in London, and exhibits annually at the San Diego Ikebana International Spring Show, the Japanese Friendship Garden, and the Art Alive at the San Diego Museum of Art. A little history about her school, and some of these names are going to be hard for me to pronounce, so bear with me. The Ichiyo School of Ikebana was founded in 1937 by brother and sister Ichiyo and Mika Kasuiwara. They sought to create an original style of Ikebana that would be suitable for modern lifestyles and environments. Akihiro Kayawa, the third Limanto, explained that Ichiyo approached to Ikebana as the union of two concepts in an arrangement. The union of two concepts. One, an arrangement that must be considered the arrangement must consider and relate to the environment in which it is created and displayed, and the arrangement must reflect the personality of the arranger. In this way, the arrangement becomes a form of artistic expression, not just flowers in a vase. The current Limanto, Naohiro Kaiwawa, I'm messing up these names big time, but challenges us to reimagine traditional styles of Ikebana. So now we turn the show over to, I wanted to introduce, the videography is Joe Cross. You can't see him here, but he's looking right at me, and we've got Noroko McDaniels back in the kitchen area here, and of course Debbie Warriner is here. So we'll take it from here, and Debbie, the show is yours.
Thank you, Jeff. That's a really nice introduction and explanation. I'd also like to go ahead and express my thanks to Noriko McDaniel, Joe Cross, incredible help with technical advising and filming, and also the Japanese Friendship Garden of San Diego for allowing us to use their facilities. The topic of my demonstration today is visible support. There are many, many means of holding floral materials in position in Ikebana arrangements. You can use Kenzan, Shippo, X and T supports, but all of these are hidden within the container, or they're covered by foliage, pebbles, or even glass beads. An alternative approach is to think of and use supports as an integral part of the design of the arrangement itself, and I'm calling these visible supports. They could be intertwining branches, stones, netting or mats, open weave baskets or trays, or even metal grids. They add visual interest, and these types of supports often dictate the type of container used and the choice of floral materials. Because the visible supports are a featured element of the arrangement, generally less floral material is used so that you can see the support. Today I'm going to demonstrate 4 different types of visible supports and show how they influence the other aspects of the arrangement. Normally I would make the entire arrangement toward you, the viewer. This is what we're taught in the Ichiyo school. But because these require that I check placement very carefully because of the supports are being part of the arrangement, I'm going to use a turntable and I'm going to be switching them back and forth. But I promise you'll see the finished product. For my first arrangement today, I'm going to be using this black Ichiyo design container. It's basically a nigiri container. And I'm going to use for my support this branch. This is actually a piece of chaparral that I picked up after a brush fire. And if you can see up close, the filigree part of it has still got the burnt bark on it. And what I do is I stripped off the burnt bark to expose the natural wood underneath. I think it just gives it a really nice contrast. Now this is to me, so I will turn it around to you. So this is I'm going to use to support my materials inside my container. And I'm not going to wire it in place, I'm just going to keep my fingers crossed and hope it stays where I want it to stay. And then I'm going to use all the little gaps in between to place my materials. One of the things I really like about this is it already starts to have inward curving lines because of this strong branch here, and then the aim and direction of even the smaller filigree branches. So I want to emphasize that, and I'm actually going to start by finishing off the curve. And to do that, I'm going to use Camellia. And there's a rubber band I totally forgot about. So, there we go. I've already partially trimmed these, but I'm going to finish them off a little bit more. Let's see. Again, I'm going to turn this back to me. Sorry. And what I've got is I want to follow that line, or that line. So I want to trim this around so that I can emphasize that aspect of it. So I definitely want to get rid of that one. And let's see, probably that one as well. Shorten that one. So now I've got this lovely finish to this. Well, as I said, hope and a prayer. As you can imagine, using this means of creating arrangements means that the arrangement is absolutely never the same way twice. And no matter how many times I have practiced this, it has changed every single time. So, again, I'm kind of hopeful. You can see it's not that easy to get them in, which means they are really held firm once they are in. So getting them in the right position is going to be the tricky part. Let's try going back a bit further. There we go. I think that gives me that inward curve and upper inward curve that I'm looking for. I want to add a little bit of depth. Let's put that one in here. Visible support is not a specific lesson in the Ichiyo school. It's one I just sort of gleaned from a lot of different things that we've done and took examples from lots of different styles and kind of put them all together. mainly because I just thought it was an interesting topic that I hadn't really explored before. And sometimes those are the most fun to do. I'm not adding a lot of material up high because I definitely want the support to be one of the primary elements of this particular arrangement. And I'm sure I could have wired that branch to the container, but that just would have been too easy. So, because this is so dark, I wanted to add some brighter flowers to kind of lighten it a little bit. So, I chose these gerberas. Yeah. This is going to take some fun time. I'm gonna have to switch it back to me. I hope all the students are taking heart that the master has trouble with this just as much as students have trouble with it. And sometimes it just does not want to cooperate, so you have to listen to your material, and it's telling me it doesn't want to go right in that spot, so I'm going to try to move it. One of the nicest things about doing spring demonstrations is the availability of such a huge variety of material. And also the fact that there's a lot of, I guess for lack of a better term, turgidity in the stems, so that you have a better chance of actually being able to use them without snapping them because they're a little bit more forgiving. Sort of the basics. And then to add a little bit of depth, I found these hypericum berries that are actually a really complementary shade of the same pink, which I didn't expect. I've never seen pink hypericum before, so this was kind of a fun thing. So I thought I would try to find a way to use it. I usually find I end up removing all of the leaves because I really want to highlight the little berries themselves. Okay, let's see if we can get that one in. think I'm still missing a little bit of depth. So let's try to put that one back in there. Okay. And that's my first arrangement. For my second arrangement, I'm going to use a dark open weave cylinder basket with an Ichiyo designed pebble pot container. These are actually ceramic, but they're meant to look like pebbles. And they're nice because they have two different flat spaces, so you can use it either in that position or that position. So they're very, very handy. They also come in a set of 5 with all different sizes, which is also really nice. In this case, I'm using the basket and interwoven branches to be my support system. So, and again, I apologize, I'm going to have to do some rotating here. The idea of this one is to use a combination of curved and straight lines, because the basket is straight and curved at the same time, the pebble is curved, so the material is a mix of the two. And I'm going to start by almost adding to the basket effect in a slightly different way. So I'm going to put materials into the pebble this way. So, I'm not using a Kenzan. This crisscross of the stems inside the opening of the pebble pot will also help hold my materials in place. But what I want to do now is to bring these branches together somewhat. And the great thing about twisted willow is that it's usually quite happy to work with you. Allow you to get a slightly different feel. I was lucky and I was able to find rooted, sprouted cuts of the willow in, of all places, Ralph's supermarket, which I didn't expect. So I wasn't originally going to try this aspect, but then I thought, well, why not? It was sort of like, you know, the Ikebana gods sent it to me, so I had to use it. You can see how much they love to hold hands. So, and we're almost finished here. Okay, so now I have two elements of support, visible support. The basket itself and the twisting, interlocking branches. So, and as I said, I wanted to add, or to continue that idea of straight and curved lines. So I thought I would use these mini asters as my straight lines. I'll try to do this one to you. And then I was lucky enough to get actually a pretty nice crop of hellebore flowers this year, which I didn't expect. They're fairly new to my garden, and I really didn't know I was going to get quite so many, which is really interesting. And they were also more varied than I expected. They're very speckled and unique. Usually you see just a single hellebore, and when I bought these plants, I thought that's what I was getting. So it was a really pleasant surprise to have them come out to be so vividly different. I think actually, the hard part's knowing, you hate to kind of cut one off, but at the same time, we'll see what happens. Yeah, I'm afraid that bottom one's going to have to go. Save it for later so you can see it. See it up close. Yep. And then this one was a much whiter variety. Again, sort of a surprise, didn't really know what to expect. And then this one bloomed, so I thought I would use it. Let's do it that way. That's my second arrangement. I want to mention the previous arrangements. You may have noticed I have not put water in the containers while I'm actually doing the arrangement. And that's because when I was practicing them, they fell over so many times that it just created a huge mess. And it seemed more practical to wait until they were moved to a different position to add the water. So obviously, if I was doing this in my own home, I would have water in the container. Also, you may have noticed I don't cut stems underwater when I demonstrate. I find that it usually adds a lot of time to the demonstration, and it's not all that interesting. Most people already know to cut their material stems underwater to make them last longer. So I'm taking that as a given that you already are aware of that. So I'm not going to bore you with doing it. Plus, again, water on the table and things falling over. So I'm trying to keep this as neat as possible. My third arrangement is using a white ceramic rectangle, again designed by the Ichiyo school. And what's nice about this is it's slightly irregular in its shape. It's not completely straight, and it has these wonderful rough, well not rough, but irregular edges to it. So it takes what would be a very straight, standard type of rectangular container and makes it just that little bit different. The support I'm going to be using for this arrangement is a stone and a piece of driftwood. So, and hopefully it will all come together. And what it is it's the weight of the stone actually has a dual purpose. It helps, I'm using that word advisedly, helps to hold the driftwood in place, doesn't always. And it also helps to hold floral materials if I put the stems in the corner so that they use the stone as kind of an arching element as a way to hold them in place. So hopefully this will all go well. The material I'm using for this one are pincushion protea, and these I actually grow in my yard in Coronado. So they're a huge bush. It's about 8 feet tall now by about 10 feet wide. It really took over. So it's happy, I'm happy, and it's blooming at the moment, so I thought I would go ahead and use that. And then as long as you're actually going to be seeing this in May, but I'm actually filming this demonstration in April. So right now these are all just coming into flower. The other things I'll be using are ligularia leaves. And these come in 7 or 8 different shapes, sizes, whatever. And I use them a lot, and I grow them in the shady spots in my garden. So this one I love because it looks almost like kale or lettuce. And they have much longer stems. I've pre-cut them for this. This is another type, slightly different, but still with the ruffled edges. And then these I'll be using in another arrangement, but they're naturally spotted. So it's not a disease, it's not a flaw in the plant. They're actually, that's the way they're supposed to grow. So they almost have a lily pad appearance, which I think is really unusual and different. And it's a nice complement to the yellow flowers. So this one is going to be sort of a flowing style arrangement. That's kind of the general idea. Again, there's not a lot of material because I really want to show off the supports. In the reverse of what we normally do, normally we'd have the smallest blossom would be the tallest, and the larger blossom would be the smallest or the shortest. In this particular arrangement, it just worked aesthetically better, I thought, to have it reversed. So the smaller flower is actually quite low, and the largest one is the highest one in this particular arrangement. And I'm doing this to you. So. When I first did this arrangement, I used tulips and mini calla lilies to try it with because I loved the arch was much more pronounced. The problem was the stems were a little too soft, and so I couldn't get them to really stay in place at the back of this container because it's a very tiny wedge that they're put into behind the stone, and it's not a straight bottom, it's not a straight edge, and so this actually worked out a little bit easier to have something with a little more stiff stem to it. I'm just going to flip that and see. If I like it, I might want that one. No, we're going that way. You can see it. The stone is better at holding the material than it is at holding the driftwood. The driftwood kind of wants to drift in this. So, let me see if I can get it back a bit. There we go. And this kind of looked very desert to me, just as it is. So I thought I would add a little bit of the other leaves to kind of soften the impact of it a little bit, but still feature the stones and the driftwood. Every time you touch it, it moves. I probably should have titled this Visible Frustration rather than Visible Supports. I'm going to say that's done. For my final arrangement today, I'm going to be using a more modern approach, whereas I did mostly more natural looking things before. And this is, it's just a basic Moribana white rectangle container. And it's very shallow, which doesn't work with a Kenzan, to be honest. I mean, it's extremely shallow. Sometimes you can use it with a shippo, and because there's enough water in there and it'll support it. But I'm going to use these metal grids. And what they are 14 by 14 inch vinyl coated metal grids. And they are separate. And I just bent them into different shapes, 3 different ones. A curved one sort of at the bottom, a regular, just a straight teepee shape in the center one. And then this one has, I don't know if you can see it, a bit of a wave to it. And then to stabilize them, I just use black zip ties in several points to hold them all together as a single mass. So I often use them separately. The nice part about these is they'll take a fair amount of bending and rebending. So if you want to change the shape, you can do it a couple of times before it finally snaps. I got these, I ordered them online. I'm not sure if I can remember where I ordered them, but they were nice because they were pliable enough that you could bend them. A lot of times the storage unit ones are too stiff and you can't do them. And these, to get these shapes, I just bent them over the edge of a potting bench, you know, so that I didn't have to do it all on my own trying to strong arm them. So what I'm going to try to do with this one is I'm going to do a crossing style arrangement. And the nice thing about using tulips is the flexibility, again, of their stems, which didn't work in that particular arrangement, but does work very well in this particular one. And I have a choice of yellow peony tulips and then sort of a light pinky purple regular basic tulip. And again, I'm using the ligularia leaves. This time I'm just using the spotted ones. And I've left the stems quite long, so you'll be able to see that, you know, they usually, that's about a standard one. They usually grow about that high. And they last a long time cut, which is nice. Makes them a nice material to use. Right, the trick about tulips, which most of you know, is they continue to grow. So you have to kind of think about that if you're going to have it in place for quite a long time. And also, you want to, rather than starting with the end, you always start with the flower. And you want to figure out where you want your flower placed, and then weave the stem in accordance afterward to get it in position. Otherwise, you'll never be able to get it where you want it. That's just the way these work. And you also want, in this particular thing, to make sure it has contact at least 2 points. because that is what will hold it in place. So we've got one contact point up here, and now I want to make sure the second one is what will hold it in its position that I want it. So, and I'll be switching this back and forth. Right now, this is to you. I found really the hardest part with this is the depth perception. It goes with my, I don't know if it's my glasses or what, but when I look at this now, I lose all sense of which grid is on top of the other grid. So sometimes it takes me a little while longer to figure out where I am. After all that, I don't like where it is. So let's move that up a bit. This, as you can imagine, always comes out different every time you make it. I don't know if it's just the nature of the tulips or what, but it never ever seems to come out the same way twice. I didn't understand when I bought these what they meant by peony tulip, and now I do. Now I get it, now that they're opening up. They really do have that look of a very small peony, which is really pretty. So now I want to add some contrast. I also wanted to pick colors that would show up against the black, and that meant lighter colors tend to be a little bit brighter in this usage. Let's see if we can get that up there. I have to say this was easier before the tulips opened up a little bit. When they were much tighter blossoms, they were easier to get between the grids. But hopefully, I can do it without inflicting too much damage. And of course, we all know that even if you place this tulip exactly where you want it to be, by tomorrow it will have decided to go somewhere else. That is just the nature of tulips. So it's definitely a enjoy the moment kind of material. Trying to remember which was the front now. I think it's that one. I think that's the front. You can obviously just keep going and do more and more and more and more and add as many as you want. But then you begin to lose the grid. And as we said at the beginning, the grid was this visible support. So I want to make sure the grid stays an important element. Nice, but it's too tall. Patience and threading is what I'm doing here. There we go. I think I'm happy with that. So, crossing form with an open metal grid for visible support.
Well, I hope you enjoyed today's demonstration, and I wanted to thank Debbie so much for all the planning and effort she did to create these 4 unique and very different arrangements, known as visible support, or as what she said, visible frustration. You could kind of tell as she was making each one. So thank you very much, and again, I wanted to thank Deborah Warriner, of course, and our videographer Joe Cross, naturally, and Imuku never made it back here, but you've seen her in last month's meeting, and also Noriko McDaniel. Thank you very much, and we'll see you later.